Tonight, dear friend, we travel back in time to a peaceful spring morning in 1885, when the first rays of sunlight shimmer across a quiet American canal. Mist drifts gently above the still water as a mule patiently waits beside the towpath. A narrow wooden canal boat, both home and workplace, rocks almost imperceptibly against its mooring. Inside, an ordinary family is already stirring. Before breakfast is served, before the first lock opens, and before the day's slow journey begins, you'll step aboard and discover a forgotten way of life that moved an entire nation one peaceful mile at a time. When America's canals still carried the quiet heartbeat of countless ordinary families. Before highways stretched across the countryside, before diesel engines filled the air with their steady rumble, and before rushing from place to place became an ordinary part of life, there was another rhythm, slower, gentler, and wonderfully patient. Imagine yourself standing beside a narrow canal just before sunrise. The sky is only beginning to soften from deep midnight blue into pale lavender. A faint silver mist floats above the perfectly still water, blurring the reflections of tall maple trees that line the opposite bank. Somewhere beyond the haze, a songbird greets the coming morning with a few hesitant notes, soon joined by another and then another, until the quiet countryside awakens one gentle voice at a time. The air feels cool against your face. It carries the fresh scent of damp earth, new grass, and the faint sweetness of blooming apple trees from a nearby orchard. Every breath seems cleaner than the last, touched by water that has flowed peacefully through this canal for decades. Not far away, tied securely beside a weathered wooden dock, rests a long, narrow canal boat. Unlike the grand sailing ships that crossed oceans or the mighty steamships that conquered wide rivers, this vessel was built for patience rather than speed. Long and slender, with softly worn timber polished by years of careful hands, it seems almost like part of the canal itself. For one hard-working family, it is far more than transportation. It is home. Inside its modest wooden walls, every inch has a purpose. Beds fold neatly into benches. Small cupboards hold dishes polished smooth by countless meals. Iron hooks suspend cooking pots above a tiny stove that has warmed countless chilly mornings just like this one. Lanterns hang quietly from wooden beams, waiting for another evening when darkness returns to the water. The boat rocks ever so slightly as tiny ripples brush against its sides. The movement is almost impossible to notice. Almost. For those who live aboard every day, it has become as familiar as breathing. The family sleeping inside hardly notices the gentle sway anymore. It has rocked them to sleep through spring rains, warm summer nights, brilliant autumn evenings, and frosty mornings that left delicate crystals clinging to every rope along the deck. A rooster crows somewhere beyond the canal. Then another answers. Soon afterward comes a softer sound, the quiet stamping of sturdy hooves. Along the towpath beside the canal waits a patient mule. Its thick brown coat catches the first hints of dawn, while tiny clouds of warm breath drift gently into the cool morning air. One ear flicks lazily toward the birds. The other turns toward the boat, as though listening for familiar footsteps that will soon begin another day's journey. Unlike horses bred for speed, canal mules were treasured for something even more valuable: steadiness. Day after day they walked the narrow towpaths without complaint, pulling heavy boats loaded with grain, lumber, coal, flour, furniture, barrels, and countless everyday goods that helped growing American towns thrive. Their pace rarely changed. Step, step, step. A rhythm so dependable that many boat children later remembered falling asleep to it every night. Inside the cabin, the first faint movement begins. A wooden floor creaks softly. Blankets rustle. A sleepy voice quietly whispers good morning. The father sits first, careful not to disturb anyone more than necessary. Years of canal life have taught him to wake with the light rather than the clock. Clocks matter less here. The sun, the weather, and the water decide the day's schedule. He slips on sturdy leather boots, their surfaces marked by years of honest work but lovingly cared for. A wool shirt keeps away the morning chill, while sturdy suspenders support well-worn trousers faded by sunlight and river mist alike. For a brief moment he simply listens. The birds, the water, the distant rooster, the soft breathing of his family. There is comfort in hearing familiar sounds before another day begins. Nearby, his wife gently stirs beneath a hand-stitched quilt. Without speaking, she reaches to light a small oil lamp. Its warm golden glow slowly pushes back the remaining darkness inside the cabin, revealing polished wood glowing softly in the early light. Nothing inside feels luxurious, yet everything feels cared for. Every shelf has been scrubbed clean, every blanket folded with quiet pride, every cup returned to its proper place after yesterday's supper. A floating home demands careful order. There is simply no room for clutter. Soon the comforting sound of kindling being arranged inside the tiny cast iron stove fills the cabin. A match scratches softly against its box before a tiny flame blossoms to life. Within moments, the rich scent of burning oak mingles with the aroma of freshly ground coffee. Few morning pleasures compare with that first comforting smell. Outside, mist continues drifting lazily across the canal as the sky slowly brightens into shades of peach and pale gold. The children begin waking one by one. The older child quietly folds blankets without being asked. Years aboard the canal have taught responsibility early. Every family member has work that helps the boat move smoothly through another day. The younger child stretches sleepily before peeking through the small round window beside the bed. "Is it another traveling day?" comes a gentle whisper. His mother smiles warmly. "It always is." The answer feels almost magical. Unlike children growing up in one village or one town, canal children often watch new landscapes unfold every week. One morning they might wake beside quiet farmland. A few days later they could find themselves tied beside a bustling canal town filled with merchants, blacksmiths, and shopkeepers greeting familiar boat families as old friends. Home traveled with them. Outside, the father climbs carefully onto the narrow deck. Morning dew has left every wooden plank glistening like polished glass. He pauses for a moment simply to admire the peaceful water stretching ahead, broken only by reflections of willow branches leaning gracefully toward the canal. Far in the distance, another canal boat appears through the mist. Its own mule already walks patiently along the towpath. The boat glides so quietly that it almost seems carried by the morning itself. There is no hurry. There never has been. Canal life teaches a lesson easily forgotten in faster ages. Distance is measured not by speed, but by steady progress. One peaceful mile follows another. The father gently strokes the waiting mule's neck before fastening the leather harness with practiced hands. The animal remains perfectly still, trusting movements repeated hundreds of times before. Leather straps settle into place. Buckles click softly. The tow line is carefully checked. Every knot matters. Every connection matters. A careless mistake could delay an entire day's journey. Yet nothing feels rushed. Even work seems calmer here. Back inside, breakfast quietly comes together. Thick slices of fresh bread rest beside creamy butter wrapped in cloth to keep it cool. A small pot of oatmeal simmers patiently while strips of smoked bacon warm slowly above the stove. Fresh apples, stored carefully beneath the sleeping benches, provide a sweet reminder that orchards are never too far away along these peaceful waterways. Soon the tiny cabin fills with comforting warmth. Simple food, simple work, simple happiness. Perhaps that was one of the Canal family's greatest treasures. Not wealth, not luxury, but a life whose rhythm allowed ordinary moments to feel extraordinary. As the first golden rays of sunlight finally rise above the trees, they scatter across the quiet canal like thousands of tiny dancing stars. The family gathers for breakfast while the boat waits patiently beside the dock. Soon they will untie the ropes. Soon the mule will begin its steady walk. Soon another peaceful chapter of their floating life will unfold, carrying them gently along one of America's most remarkable forgotten highways. But for just a little longer, the canal belongs only to the quiet morning, the singing birds, the drifting mist, and a family grateful to greet another beautiful day upon the water. Life inside a floating home. The breakfast dishes are washed almost as soon as the last bite has been enjoyed. On a canal boat, there is no room to let small chores wait for another time. Every plate, every spoon, every cup quickly returns to its proper place, tucked neatly into shelves, fitted with little wooden rails that keep them from sliding whenever the boat gently rocks. It is a quiet routine, practiced so often that each family member moves almost without thinking, their hands remembering what years aboard the water have taught them. Outside, the towel line grows gently taut. The patient mule lowers its head and takes the first familiar step along the narrow dirt path beside the canal. Then another, and another. The heavy boat responds almost reluctantly at first. Water whispers softly against the hull as the floating home begins to glide away from the dock with scarcely a ripple. No engine growls. No smoke fills the morning air. Only the steady footsteps of the mule and the faint creak of leather harnesses accompany the beginning of another day's journey. Inside, the movement feels surprisingly gentle. A visitor might expect constant rocking, but canal boats travel so smoothly that a cup of coffee can often rest upon the small table without spilling a single drop. That calm movement shapes nearly every part of daily life. The mother wipes the tabletop with a damp cloth before folding it neatly against the wall. Within moments, what had been the breakfast area becomes open floor space once again. Every piece of furniture serves more than one purpose aboard a canal boat. A bench becomes a bed. A table disappears into the wall. Storage hides beneath nearly every seat. Hooks suspend coats, lanterns, ropes, and baskets overhead. Nothing is wasted. Every inch of space has earned its place through usefulness. The cabin itself stretches only a short distance from bow to stern, yet clever craftsmanship makes it feel remarkably welcoming. Warm pine boards line the walls, polished by countless hands over many seasons. Tiny brass latches gleam softly whenever sunlight slips through the windows, while colorful woven rugs soften the wooden floor beneath careful footsteps. Even the smallest decoration has meaning. Near one window sits a tiny flower pot holding fresh violets gathered only yesterday beside the towpath. Their delicate purple blossoms brighten the cabin with a quiet reminder that beauty often arrives in the simplest forms. Above the stove hangs a framed family photograph, carefully protected behind thick glass. The faces captured there wear serious expressions, as was common for photographs of the time, yet their eyes still seem filled with quiet affection. Photographs were precious. Few families owned many. One carefully preserved image could travel thousands of peaceful miles aboard a canal boat. The younger child kneels beside the little round window, watching the passing scenery with endless fascination. Trees drift by so slowly that every branch, every bird's nest, and every patch of wildflowers seems worthy of careful study. "What town will we reach today?" comes the curious question. His father smiles without looking away from the water ahead. "If the locks are kind to us," he replies gently, "perhaps Willow Bend before sunset." The answer carries no certainty. Canal life follows its own schedule. A crowded lock, heavy rain, a broken towel line, even an unusually stubborn mule. Any of these might change the day's destination. The family has learned not to hurry what cannot be hurried. Instead, they measure success differently. Did the cargo stay dry? Did everyone remain healthy? Did the mule finish the day safely? Those are the victories that matter most. Near the stern, the eldest child carefully opens a small wooden chest filled with school books, slates, and neatly folded writing paper. Unlike children who attend the same schoolhouse every week, many Canal children learned wherever their journey happened to take them. Some communities welcomed traveling children into local classrooms for a few days. Others relied upon lessons taught by parents during quiet afternoons aboard the boat. Education became wonderfully flexible. The canal itself often served as the classroom. Geography unfolded beyond every window. Mathematics appeared in cargo ledgers. Reading happened beneath lantern light after supper. History arrived through conversations with lock keepers, merchants, farmers, and fellow boat families from distant towns. Every journey became another lesson. The mother settles beside the youngest child with a well-worn storybook. Its leather cover has faded from years of careful use, while many corners bear tiny repairs stitched patiently with thread. Books are treasured companions aboard the canal. During rainy afternoons, long winter evenings, or peaceful nights tied beside quiet villages, stories become as comforting as warm blankets. Her voice remains soft, never rising above the gentle sounds outside. As she reads, the younger child occasionally glances through the window, comparing the printed illustrations with the real countryside slowly passing beyond the glass. A pair of white ducks paddle quietly through a narrow patch of reeds. Farther away, a farmer guides two broad-backed horses across freshly turned soil. Beyond them stands a red barn whose weathered boards have witnessed decades of changing seasons. Everything passes slowly enough to admire. There is no rush to the landscape. The canal teaches patience simply by existing. Meanwhile, the father stands quietly at the tiller near the stern. Steering a canal boat demands surprisingly little effort on calm stretches like this, yet constant attention remains essential. Tiny adjustments keep the long vessel centered within the narrow waterway, avoiding submerged branches or gentle curves where the banks draw closer together. His hands barely move. Years of experience have taught him to anticipate the canal almost before it changes. Ahead, a graceful stone bridge appears between towering sycamore trees. Its arch rises just high enough for canal boats to pass beneath. The younger child eagerly watches as the bridge grows larger. For a brief moment, cool shade surrounds the boat. Birdsong echoes softly beneath the old stonework. Then sunlight returns again on the other side, warming the cabin windows with golden light. Simple moments like these never lose their charm. The mother now begins another familiar task: laundry. A small wooden bucket filled with fresh canal water waits beside the cabin door. Shirts, aprons, stockings, and hand towels are scrubbed carefully using homemade soap before being rinsed and gently wrung dry. Soon a narrow clothesline stretches along part of the deck. White fabric dances softly in the spring breeze like tiny sails greeting the morning. Passing boat families often recognize one another not by names alone, but by familiar boats, familiar mules, even familiar laundry fluttering above the decks. Friendships travel these waterways year after year. Sometimes families meet again dozens of miles away, exchanging news, recipes, weather stories, and laughter as naturally as neighbors meeting across a village fence. The canal is more than transportation. It is a moving neighborhood. By late morning, warm sunlight fills every corner of the cabin. The stove has cooled. Fresh air drifts through open windows carrying the scent of lilacs blooming somewhere beyond the towpath. A gentle breeze stirs the curtains. The younger child has already curled comfortably beneath one of them, listening to water brushing against the wooden hull with sleepy contentment. There is something almost magical about that sound. Not waves crashing, not rushing rivers, only the quiet, endless conversation between boat and canal. Many children raised aboard canal boats later remembered that gentle sound long after they had grown old. It became the music of home. Outside, the mule continues its steady journey. Step, step, step. The rhythm never hurries. Neither does the family. Together they move through a world where patience is not a burden, but a way of life. Where every bend in the canal offers another peaceful view, another quiet encounter, and another gentle reminder that happiness is often found not in arriving quickly, but in traveling well. And as the floating home glides deeper into the green countryside of 1885 America, the morning slowly ripens toward afternoon, carrying with it the promise of new landscapes, kind faces, and another beautifully ordinary day upon the peaceful canal. The slow rhythm of travel. The sun has now climbed higher into the late morning sky, spreading a warm golden light across the quiet canal. The cool mist that greeted the dawn has long since disappeared, leaving behind a broad ribbon of water that mirrors the blue sky so perfectly it becomes difficult to tell where the world ends and its reflection begins. The canal boat glides forward with the same calm determination it has shown since sunrise. Nothing about its movement feels hurried. Nothing asks to be rushed. The steady pull of the mule along the towpath remains almost hypnotic. Its ears twitch now and then at the buzzing of a dragonfly or the cheerful call of a meadowlark, but its pace never changes. Leather harnesses creak softly with every measured step, and the long taw line draws a gentle line across the water before disappearing toward the bow. Many travelers in later generations would hardly believe that such a simple partnership between animal, rope, and water once moved thousands of tons of freight across America. Yet in 1885, this quiet rhythm was entirely ordinary. Flour bound for growing towns, fresh apples packed carefully into wooden barrels, coal for blacksmith shops, lumber destined for new homes, nails, fabric, tools, books, furniture, and even pianos all traveled these peaceful waterways. Every cargo carried with it countless hopes belonging to families the boat's crew would never meet. The father rests one hand lightly upon the tiller while his eyes wander ahead, reading the canal almost the way another man might read a familiar book. He notices subtle changes invisible to newcomers, the way ripples gather near a submerged log, the faint bend where the current presses gently against the bank, the shadow beneath an overhanging willow where floating branches sometimes drift unnoticed. Years have taught him that the canal always speaks quietly. One only has to learn its language. Behind him, the younger child has climbed onto a small wooden crate placed safely beside the stern. From there, the view stretches far behind the boat, revealing the winding ribbon of water disappearing between rows of maple and elm trees. "Will the canal ever end?" the child asks with genuine wonder. His father smiles. "It does," he replies softly. But every ending becomes the beginning of another road. The answer satisfies the child for the moment, though his curious eyes soon return to watching the endless procession of reflections dancing upon the water. Inside the cabin, the mother has begun mending a worn work shirt. Needle and thread pass patiently through sturdy cloth, repairing places where months of honest labor have slowly worn the fabric thin. There is comfort in repairing rather than replacing. Every carefully stitched patch tells a quiet story. This tear came from unloading heavy grain sacks, another from brushing too closely against rough oak timbers inside a lock. A faded elbow reminds her of an unusually cold autumn when thick wool coats became daily companions. Nothing aboard the boat is discarded carelessly. Everything earns another season whenever possible. Nearby, the eldest child carefully copies handwriting exercises onto a slate board. Each letter is formed slowly, not because anyone demands perfection, but because careful work has become a family habit. Outside the open doorway, birds continue singing among the branches. A bright red cardinal lands briefly upon the railing before darting away again into the trees. A pair of swallows swoop gracefully above the canal, their wings barely touching the still air. Dragonflies skim low across the surface, leaving tiny circles wherever they briefly kiss the water. Nature seems wonderfully unhurried here. Even time itself appears to drift more slowly. As another gentle bend approaches, the canal widens slightly. Along the opposite bank stands a small herd of dairy cows grazing peacefully among wildflowers. Their tails flick lazily against persistent flies while nearby calves rest beneath the shade of broad oak trees. Beyond the pasture rises a white farmhouse surrounded by vegetable gardens, fruit trees, and weathered wooden fences. Smoke curls gently from its chimney. Somewhere inside, another family is surely preparing their midday meal. The younger child waves enthusiastically. To his delight, a woman hanging freshly washed sheets notices the passing boat and returns the greeting with a cheerful smile. Simple moments like these happen often along the canal. Though strangers may never learn one another's names, brief exchanges of friendly waves help weave an invisible thread connecting countless lives along the waterway. The canal is not merely a route. It is a community stretching for hundreds of peaceful miles. By early afternoon, sunlight grows warmer. The mule's steady breathing becomes slightly deeper as the day advances, so the father decides it is time for a short rest. He guides the boat toward a grassy bank shaded by towering sycamores whose wide branches offer welcome shelter from the bright sun. The tow line is loosened. The mule lowers its head immediately toward fresh grass growing beside the towpath. Its work pauses without complaint. The family understands something important. A well-rested mule means a safe journey for everyone. While the animal grazes contentedly, lunch is prepared aboard the boat. Nothing extravagant appears upon the table. Slices of homemade bread, sharp cheddar cheese wrapped in cloth, fresh radishes gathered from a farmer only yesterday, cold roast chicken saved carefully from the evening before, crisp apples, a jar of pickled cucumbers, cool well water poured into sturdy tin cups. Every meal feels wonderfully satisfying after a morning spent beneath open skies. The family eats slowly, listening to leaves rustle overhead as a gentle breeze wanders through the trees. Not every conversation concerns work. Sometimes they speak of birds they have seen, clouds shaped like ships, a family of foxes spotted near the towpath last autumn, the smell of wild roses blooming farther ahead. Ordinary observations become treasured memories because there is always time to notice them. After lunch, the younger child lies beneath the shade of a sycamore while watching clouds drift lazily overhead. Some resemble castles, others become sailing ships. One looks almost exactly like the family's faithful mule. His older sibling laughs softly before pointing toward another cloud that resembles an enormous loaf of bread. Their mother smiles as she quietly folds the lunch cloth. There is no need to hurry anyone back aboard. The canal has waited for generations. It can wait another few peaceful minutes. Eventually, the father checks the position of the son. With gentle familiarity, he pats the mule's shoulder before fastening the harness once again. The faithful animal accepts the task with calm patience. Soon, step, 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 the quiet rhythm returns. The boat glides away from the shaded bank almost without a sound. Ahead, the canal narrows slightly between two rocky hillsides where tall pines replace the broad, deciduous trees of the morning. Their fragrant scent fills the warm afternoon air. Somewhere deeper within the forest, a woodpecker taps steadily against an old tree trunk. Far overhead, a hawk circles gracefully upon rising currents of warm air. The father glances toward the peaceful landscape and smiles almost to himself. No 2 days upon the canal are ever exactly alike. Yet every day offers the same precious gift: time to notice, time to breathe, time to live at the gentle pace of flowing water. And as the canal curves quietly beyond the pine-covered hillside, another small wonder waits just ahead, one that every traveling family knows well and every child eagerly anticipates. Before the day is over, they will arrive at one of the canal's greatest marvels, where boats slowly rise and fall with the water itself, guided by the patient hands of the lock keepers who have spent their lives mastering one of America's most remarkable inventions. Passing through the locks, the canal bends gently to the left, and the peaceful stretch of open water begins to narrow between sturdy stone walls that rise gradually from the banks. Ahead, the family can already see something that has become both familiar and quietly fascinating after years upon the canal: the lock. To a first-time traveler, it might appear to be nothing more than a pair of enormous wooden gates standing patiently across the water. Yet every boat family knows these structures perform a remarkable task. They gently lift or lower boats between sections of canal that rest at different heights, allowing long journeys across rolling countryside that would otherwise be impossible. The younger child spots it first. "We're almost there!" His voice carries excitement, though even that excitement remains softened by the peaceful rhythm of the day. His father smiles. "We are indeed." He removes his hat for a moment, letting the warm afternoon breeze pass through his hair before placing it back upon his head. "There will be plenty to watch." The mule continues walking steadily until reaching a familiar wooden post beside the towpath. Here, the father gently unfastens the tow line. For a little while, the faithful animal's work is finished. It lowers its head gratefully toward a patch of fresh grass growing near the lock keeper's small cottage, already knowing from long experience that boats move through locks under human hands rather than animal strength. Nearby stands the lock keeper's home. It is a modest stone cottage with whitewashed walls, green shutters, and a carefully tended vegetable garden bursting with lettuce, onions, carrots, and rows of fragrant herbs. Climbing roses frame the front doorway, while smoke curls lazily from a brick chimney despite the pleasant weather. A wooden rocking chair rests quietly upon the porch. Beside it sits a sleepy orange cat, scarcely bothering to lift its head as another canal boat approaches. Life here moves at nearly the same patient pace as the canal itself. The lock keeper steps outside after hearing the familiar sound of approaching voices. He is an older gentleman whose broad straw hat shades a weathered face marked by years beneath sun, wind, and rain. His gray beard has grown neatly trimmed, and his suspenders stretch comfortably across a faded blue work shirt. He raises one hand in greeting. "Good afternoon." "And to you," the father replies warmly. "No one seems hurried. There is time for greetings. There is always time for kindness." The lock keeper walks toward one of the massive wooden balance beams attached to the lower gate. Each beam is fashioned from thick oak, polished smooth by thousands of hands over many decades. Iron hinges, blackened with age and carefully maintained, hold the heavy gates firmly in place. The younger child watches with wide eyes. Though he has seen locks many times before, they never lose their quiet magic. The lock keeper slowly pushes against the great wooden beam. At first, nothing seems to happen. Then, with a deep wooden groan, the enormous gate begins to move. Water swirls gently around its edges. Sunlight dances upon tiny ripples spreading across the chamber. Little by little, the opening widens until the narrow entrance welcomes the waiting boat. "There she is," the father says softly. "Easy now." Using a long wooden pole, he gently guides the bow toward the opening, while the eldest child stands ready with thick mooring ropes. Every movement feels calm. Nothing is forced. The canal boat glides gracefully into the stone chamber. Its sides pass only a short distance from the weathered walls, where patches of soft green moss cling to damp stone laid by skilled masons many decades earlier. The sound changes immediately. Outside, birds still sing among the trees. Inside the lock, every voice echoes gently from the high stone walls. Water laps quietly against ancient masonry. A swallow darts briefly overhead before disappearing beneath the wooden bridge crossing above the gates. The boat settles into place. The eldest child tosses a looped rope toward an iron bollard fixed into the wall. A young assistant catches it neatly. He cannot be much older than 16, yet his confident movements reveal years spent learning this careful trade. Together they secure the boat without a single hurried word. The heavy gates behind the family now begin to close. Again comes the slow groan of ancient oak. The sound is deep, patient, almost comforting. When both gates finally meet, the lock chamber becomes still once more. For a brief moment, nothing appears to happen. The younger child looks around curiously. "Are we stuck?" His mother smiles. "Just wait." Almost immediately, another sound begins. A quiet rushing, not loud, not violent. Simply the steady whisper of water entering through hidden channels beneath the gates. The younger child leans carefully over the railing. At first, the movement is almost impossible to notice. Then, the stone wall seems to slide downward. Of course, it is not the wall moving at all. The boat itself is rising, very slowly, very gently. The family has experienced this countless times, yet each passage still carries a certain peaceful wonder. There is no sudden motion, no jolt. Only the quiet strength of water doing exactly what it has always done. The younger child watches the marks carved into the stone wall. One by one, they sink lower beside the boat. Soon the tops of nearby trees become easier to see beyond the upper gates. The world itself seems to lift. The father rests both hands comfortably upon the railing. "When I was your age," he says quietly, "I thought giants must be hiding beneath every lock, lifting the boats with invisible hands." The younger child laughs. "Did grandfather tell you that?" "He let me believe it for nearly a whole summer." His mother chuckles softly. "I imagine he enjoyed that very much." Everyone smiles. Stories have always traveled these canals alongside the cargo. Some are perfectly true. Others grow a little larger with every passing season. A few minutes later, the rushing water becomes softer, then quieter still. Finally, silence. The boat has reached the upper level. The lockkeeper walks once again toward the great balance beams. With practiced strength, he opens the upper gates. Golden afternoon sunlight pours into the chamber. Beyond lies another peaceful stretch of canal winding gently between fields of waving grass and scattered wildflowers. The father nods gratefully. "Our thanks! Safe travels!" the lockkeeper replies. The younger child waves enthusiastically. "So long!" The older man tips his hat. "And may your mule stay wiser than mine ever was." Everyone laughs gently, including the young assistant, who has likely heard that friendly joke many times before. The ropes are released. The father guides the boat forward. As the bow passes through the open gates, the mule is brought once more to the towpath. The harness is fastened. The towline grows gently tight. Without command, without hesitation, the faithful animal resumes its familiar rhythm. Step, step, step. The boat leaves the lock behind as smoothly as it entered. Soon the stone walls disappear among clusters of maple trees. The sounds of birds return. Dragonflies skim low above the water once again. Somewhere ahead, the afternoon stretches peacefully onward, carrying the family toward another quiet village, another evening meal, and another night beneath a sky slowly filling with stars. For now, however, there is only the gentle glide of the canal, the steady footsteps upon the towpath, and the comforting knowledge that every lock passed is another small chapter written into the long, unhurried story of life aboard a canal boat in the spring of 1885. Canal towns along the way. The afternoon sun hangs comfortably above the treetops as the canal boat leaves the lock far behind. The water has become wonderfully smooth once again, disturbed only by the gentle V-shaped wake trailing quietly behind the stern. The faithful mule continues along the towpath with its familiar, patient rhythm, while the family settles back into the peaceful routine that has shaped their lives for years. Ahead, the landscape begins to change. The quiet forests slowly give way to cultivated fields. White fences appear beside the canal, enclosing neat pastures where sheep graze beneath scattered shade trees. Beyond them stand orchards heavy with young apples, their branches swaying gently whenever a warm breeze drifts across the countryside. The father notices something else, a faint curl of chimney smoke rising above the distant tree line. He smiles knowingly. "We're getting close!" The younger child climbs eagerly onto the bench beside the cabin window. "To Willow Bend?" If the canal agrees, his father answers with a quiet grin. Soon another sign appears. A weathered wooden post stands beside the towpath, its painted letters slightly faded by countless seasons of rain and sunshine. Will W. Bend. Un-mile. For travelers upon the canal, these simple markers are always welcome. They promise fresh supplies, friendly conversation, and perhaps a little time to stretch one's legs before continuing another peaceful journey. As the boat glides onward, the sounds of the countryside slowly begin to change. The songs of meadow birds blend with more familiar human sounds. A blacksmith's hammer rings faintly somewhere ahead. A wagon rattles across wooden planks. A dog barks cheerfully before falling silent again. Church bells drift softly through the warm afternoon air, their slow echoes carried effortlessly across the still water. None of the sounds feel intrusive. Instead, they weave gently into the comforting music of everyday life. The canal rounds one final bend. There it is, Willow Bend. The village rests comfortably along both sides of the canal, as though it has quietly grown beside the water for generations, which, in many ways, it has. Brick storefronts stand shoulder to shoulder along the main street. Their wide windows display everything from bolts of colorful fabric to polished cooking pots, sturdy leather boots, glass oil lamps, and neatly stacked barrels filled with flour and sugar. Children chase one another beneath enormous elm trees whose branches shade wooden boardwalks. Ladies wearing light, spring dresses chat beside baskets overflowing with fresh vegetables. A barber sweeps yesterday's hair from the front steps of his little shop. Two elderly gentlemen sit outside the general store, rocking gently in wooden chairs while discussing weather that neither of them seems eager to predict. Life moves slowly here, not because people lack ambition, but because there is simply no reason to hurry. The canal boat approaches a familiar public dock already occupied by several other vessels. Each one looks slightly different. Some carry coal, others transport lumber. One has chickens clucking softly inside carefully built wooden crates. Another displays colorful flower boxes beneath its cabin windows. Though every boat serves the same canal, each quietly reflects the family who calls it home. The father guides their boat alongside the dock with practiced ease. The eldest child steps ashore carrying a thick mooring rope. Within moments, the boat is tied securely. Their floating home has arrived. Almost immediately, familiar voices call out, "Good afternoon! You're back again! How's the journey been?" The family smiles warmly. Canal life creates remarkable friendships. Some neighbors remain only a few miles apart. Canal neighbors may not see one another for several weeks. Yet whenever they meet again, conversation resumes almost exactly where it ended before. Mrs. Harper, who operates the small bakery beside the canal, steps outside carrying a wicker basket still warm from the ovens. The delicious aroma reaches the boat long before she does. Fresh bread, sweet cinnamon rolls, butter biscuits. The younger child inhales deeply. "I think I know where we're going first." His mother laughs softly. "I thought you might." Mrs. Harper greets them as though welcoming old relatives. "I've just taken these out." She lifts a cloth from the basket. Golden loaves gleam beneath the afternoon sunlight, their crisp crusts filling the entire dock with the comforting fragrance of freshly baked bread. Few smells can compete with warm bread after days upon the canal. The mother purchases 2 loaves along with several cinnamon buns carefully wrapped in brown paper. "No charge for the extra one," Mrs. Harper whispers, slipping another bun into the parcel. "For the young fellow?" The younger child's eyes grow wide. "Thank you, ma'am," she smiles. "You've grown another inch since autumn." "I think it's the bread," he answers very seriously. Everyone laughs. Nearby, the father walks toward the feed merchant while leading the mule beside him. The faithful animal receives nearly as many greetings as its owners. "Still pulling as steady as ever?" asks the merchant. "Better than I do," the father replies. Fresh oats are poured into a sturdy canvas sack. A bundle of sweet hay follows. The mule lowers its head happily, already anticipating supper. Good care of the animal is simply understood. Without its quiet strength, none of these journeys would be possible. Meanwhile, the eldest child visits the general store carrying a carefully folded list written by his mother. Lamp oil, tea leaves, needles, thread, a small bar of homemade soap, brown sugar, a little flour. The shopkeeper moves methodically among tall wooden shelves reaching nearly to the ceiling. Glass jars filled with peppermint candies catch the afternoon sunlight. Large barrels overflow with beans, rice, and dried apples. Bundles of rope hang neatly from heavy wooden beams overhead. The air smells pleasantly of coffee, leather, spices, and fresh pine lumber. Every corner invites quiet curiosity. The shopkeeper wraps each purchase carefully in brown paper before tying everything securely with string. Nothing is wasted. Even the paper may find another use aboard the boat. Outside, once again, the younger child has discovered another favorite destination, the village blacksmith. The forge glows warmly despite the pleasant spring weather. Inside, sparks rise like tiny golden stars each time the hammer meets glowing iron. Clang, clang, clang. The sound echoes pleasantly across the canal. The blacksmith pauses long enough to wipe his brow. "Come to watch?" The child nods enthusiastically. "I always do." With patient kindness, the blacksmith holds up a newly finished horseshoe. "Everyone begins like this." He points toward a simple iron bar waiting beside the fire. A little heat, a little patience, and a great many careful blows. The younger child studies the transformation with quiet fascination. Even ordinary tools possess their own stories. As afternoon gradually leans toward evening, the family gathers once more beside their boat. Fresh supplies are neatly stored. Water barrels are refilled from the town pump. The mule finishes its meal contentedly beneath the shade of a great willow tree that has likely watched thousands of canal boats come and go. Church bells ring once again. This time their gentle notes announce the approach of evening. Warm amber light begins settling across the rooftops. Storekeepers sweep their front steps. Children are called home for supper. Smoke rises from dozens of chimneys as kitchens throughout Willow Bend prepare the evening meal. The canal reflects it all like polished glass. For a little while longer, the family remains quietly tied beside the dock, content simply to watch the peaceful village settle into its familiar evening rhythm. Tomorrow the journey will continue. Another stretch of canal, another peaceful landscape, another collection of ordinary moments that, together, form an extraordinary life. But tonight, Willow Bend offers something equally precious: a warm welcome, friendly faces, fresh bread, and the comforting feeling that wherever the canal may lead next, there will always be another quiet town waiting with open hearts beside the water. Evening beside the canal. The last customers leave the village bakery just as the afternoon light begins to soften into the rich golden colors of early evening. Long shadows stretch lazily across the wooden boardwalks, while the canal itself reflects the changing sky like a polished ribbon of copper and blue. For the canal boat family, this is one of the most comforting hours of the entire day. The journey has paused. The cargo rests securely. The mule has finished its work. Now the evening belongs to quiet routines that have changed very little over the years. The father unties a small folding stool from the side of the boat and places it near the water's edge. Before doing anything else, he walks to the mule, gently running his hand along the animal's neck. "You've earned your rest today." The mule lifts its head for only a moment before returning to its fresh hay. Nearby, a wooden bucket filled with clean water reflects the first hints of sunset. After drinking deeply, the animal lets out a long, contented breath. The younger child smiles. "I think he's happier than I am." His father chuckles softly. "I'm not so sure about that." The mother steps aboard carrying the bundle from Mrs. Harper's bakery. Even before she unwraps the brown paper, the cabin begins filling with the warm fragrance of fresh bread. The smell seems to settle into every corner of the little floating home. It mingles with polished pine, clean laundry, faint wood smoke from nearby chimneys, and the gentle scent of the canal itself. Together, these familiar aromas create something difficult to describe: the smell of home. Inside the cabin, the evening meal begins with quiet preparation. A small cast iron pot is placed upon the stove. Dry oak kindling crackles gently as the fire slowly awakens beneath it. Soon, chopped onions begin to sizzle softly in a little butter. The comforting sound fills the tiny cabin. Carrots follow. Then potatoes. Fresh herbs purchased from a farmer along yesterday's route. Finally, a small portion of smoked ham adds its rich aroma to the simple stew. Nothing extravagant, nothing wasteful, only honest food prepared with care. The eldest child carefully slices the fresh bread while trying not to sample too much before supper. His mother notices. "So," she asks with a playful smile. "How many slices have disappeared?" He pauses. "Only one." The younger child immediately answers. "Two." Everyone laughs. The eldest grins sheepishly. "Perhaps 2. The laughter is gentle, never loud enough to disturb the peaceful evening drifting through the open windows. Outside, Willow Bend gradually settles into its nightly rhythm. The blacksmith has closed his workshop. His forge glows only faintly now, like the last red coals of a campfire. Across the street, the barber locks his front door before tipping his hat to neighbors walking home. The general storekeeper lowers wooden shutters over the windows one by one. Church bells ring softly in the distance. Not urgently. Simply marking another ordinary evening in the life of a quiet American town. The family carries their supper outside onto the deck. Warm evenings are too beautiful to remain indoors. The father balances bowls carefully as everyone finds a comfortable place to sit. The younger child chooses his favorite spot near the bow, where he can watch ducks gliding silently across the canal. Steam rises gently from the stew. Fresh bread is passed from hand to hand. Butter melts slowly into its warm crust. The family eats without hurry. Conversation comes naturally between comfortable silences. "Tomorrow we'll likely reach another lock before noon," the father says. The eldest nods thoughtfully. "I'd like to help with the ropes again. You handled them well today." The younger child looks up. "Can I help too?" His father smiles warmly. "You already do?" "I do. You remind us to notice things." The child blinks. "What things?" "The The birds, the clouds, the flowers, the turtles you spotted this morning. We adults sometimes forget to look." The younger child considers this very seriously before quietly returning to his supper. Across the canal, another boat family has also stopped for the evening. Their children wave enthusiastically. The younger child immediately waves back. Within a few minutes, both families find themselves chatting across the still water. Nothing important, just ordinary conversation. "How are the locks farther west? Any heavy rain ahead? Did you happen to see the Johnson family? Mrs. Harper still baking those cinnamon rolls?" Small questions, small answers. Yet together they form the invisible threads connecting hundreds of families whose lives revolve around these peaceful waterways. As twilight deepens, lanterns begin appearing throughout Willow Bend. One glows inside the bakery, another outside the post office. A warm golden light spills from the windows of the little church. Farther down the street, the hotel porch welcomes weary travelers with several hanging oil lamps swaying gently in the evening breeze. One by one, the village quietly lights the coming night. The reflections shimmer beautifully across the calm canal. It almost appears as though tiny stars have settled upon the water before darkness has fully arrived. After supper, the dishes are washed in warm water and dried immediately. Again, every item returns to its familiar place. Routine brings comfort. Nothing needs to be searched for tomorrow morning. Everything waits exactly where it belongs. The eldest child takes out the small family Bible while the younger settles comfortably beside his mother. The father lowers the cabin lantern until its light becomes soft and gentle. Together they read only a few quiet passages, not hurriedly, not ceremoniously, simply as another peaceful tradition woven into everyday life. Outside, crickets begin their nightly song. Somewhere beyond the village, a whip-poor-will calls from the edge of the woods. Frogs answer from hidden reeds along the canal bank. The entire countryside seems to breathe more slowly. The younger child yawns. "I don't think I'll stay awake much longer." "No one expects you to," his mother says, gently brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. The sleeping arrangements appear almost magically. The table folds away. Blankets are unfolded. Simple mattresses are laid neatly across built-in bunks. The tiny cabin transforms once again, this time from dining room into bedroom. It has performed this quiet miracle every evening for years. Before climbing inside, the father steps back onto the deck one final time. The village has grown wonderfully quiet. The moon has risen above the treetops, casting a silvery path across the still canal. Their boat rocks so gently that the movement is barely noticeable. The mule sleeps peacefully beneath the willow tree. Not another sound disturbs the night beyond the occasional splash of a fish rising briefly to the surface. The father removes his hat and gazes across the moonlit water. How many evenings like this has the canal witnessed? Thousands, perhaps tens of thousands. Boat families have watched these same reflections for generations. Children have fallen asleep to the same gentle sounds. Parents have quietly planned tomorrow's journey beneath these same stars. He smiles to himself. Some lives become memorable because they are filled with great adventures. Others become unforgettable because they are filled with peaceful, ordinary moments, repeated faithfully day after day. Life aboard a canal boat belongs to the second kind. And as the lantern inside the cabin is turned down to its faintest glow, the family drifts toward restful sleep, gently cradled by calm water beneath the quiet American sky of 1885, while tomorrow's journey patiently waits with the sunrise. A rainy day on the canal. By the time the first hint of morning light reaches the eastern horizon, something has changed. The cheerful chorus of robins that usually welcomes the dawn is quieter today. The breeze, which so often carries the sweet fragrance of dew-covered grass across the canal, now feels cool and heavy. Even before opening the cabin door, the father senses it. Rain is coming. Not a violent summer storm. Not the kind that sends branches tumbling across roads or fills rivers beyond their banks. This feels different. A slow, steady rain. The sort that settles gently over the countryside and lingers for hours, washing dust from leaves and filling the air with a comforting scent of wet earth. He steps quietly onto the deck. Above him, yesterday's bright blue sky has disappeared beneath soft gray clouds stretching from one horizon to the other. The rising sun hides behind them, turning the entire morning into a world of gentle silver light. The canal looks different now. Instead of reflecting the sky like polished glass, its surface has become smooth and dark, almost like weathered slate. The father smiles softly. It'll be a peaceful day. Inside the cabin, the family begins another morning, though the pace feels even slower than usual. The stove is lit while tiny droplets begin tapping softly against the roof. Tick, tick, tick. The sound is so gentle that it almost blends with the crackling fire beneath the kettle. The younger child stirs beneath his blanket. Is it raining? Just beginning, his mother whispers. He smiles sleepily. I like rainy mornings. So do I. Soon warm oatmeal fills simple bowls. A drizzle of honey makes the breakfast feel like a small celebration despite the weather outside. Steam rises from mugs of tea while the cabin windows slowly gather tiny beads of moisture around their edges. Everything feels wonderfully cozy. The rain grows steadier, not loud, simply constant. Each drop lands softly upon the wooden roof before joining thousands of others sliding quietly toward the canal below. There is something deeply comforting about hearing rain while safely sheltered inside a warm home, even when that home happens to float upon the water itself. After breakfast, everyone dresses a little differently than yesterday. Heavy wool sweaters replace lighter shirts. Oilskin coats are carefully unfolded from hooks along the cabin wall. Wide-brimmed waterproof hats wait near the doorway. Rubber boots have not yet become common, so sturdy leather boots receive a fresh coating of protective grease before anyone steps outside. Every family traveling the canal knows that staying dry means staying healthy. The father gently checks the mule's harness. Rain has darkened the leather until it shines almost black. He runs his fingers along every buckle. Everything remains secure. The faithful animal seems almost completely unbothered by the weather. It simply blinks slowly as cool droplets gather upon its thick coat. You don't mind the rain much, do you? The mule flicks one ear. The younger child laughs. I think that's his way of saying no. Within a few minutes, the boat is moving once again. Step, step, step. The familiar rhythm continues beneath gray skies. Rain transforms the entire landscape. The dusty towpath becomes darker, releasing the rich scent of damp soil. Wildflowers bow beneath sparkling droplets that cling to every petal like tiny crystal beads. Spider webs stretched between reeds suddenly become visible, decorated with hundreds of perfect pearls of rainwater. Even ordinary fence posts appear more beautiful beneath the soft morning drizzle. The younger child presses his face gently against the cool window. I've never noticed how green everything becomes. His mother joins him. Rain helps us see colors we sometimes forget. She is right. The forests seem deeper. The fields brighter. The moss covering old stone bridges almost glows against the gray morning. Small streams that yesterday barely trickled now flow happily toward the canal, carrying fresh mountain water into its patient current. Inside the cabin, today's activities naturally shift indoors. The eldest child continues practicing careful handwriting, while his mother begins knitting a warm wool scarf that will likely be finished before autumn arrives. Click, click, click. The knitting needles keep a quiet rhythm of their own. The younger child sits nearby with a small wooden box filled with treasures collected during previous journeys. Smooth river stones, a bright blue bird feather, several unusual acorns, a tiny horseshoe nail given to him months ago by a friendly blacksmith. Each object holds a memory. Each memory belongs somewhere along the winding canal. Outside, another boat approaches slowly from the opposite direction. Its captain raises one hand beneath the brim of his rain hat. The father returns the greeting. No words are needed. Canal travelers understand one another. They know what it means to rise before dawn, to guide heavy boats through narrow locks, to trust patient mules, and to find quiet joy even beneath rainy skies. The two boats pass so gently that their ripples barely disturb one another. Soon they disappear into opposite bends of the canal. The rain continues. Around midday, the family reaches an old stone aqueduct carrying the canal across a peaceful river valley. The younger child always looks forward to this remarkable place. Are we really floating above another river? We are, his father replies. The child hurries outside beneath his oilskin coat. Carefully holding the railing, he looks over the side. Far below, the smaller river winds between smooth rocks and willow trees. Its water rushes much faster than the calm canal above. It almost feels like floating through the sky. The aqueduct itself is an impressive work of engineering. Massive stone arches rise from the valley floor, supporting the canal high above the flowing river. Every block of limestone was placed by skilled hands many decades ago. Rainwater trickles gently between tiny cracks where moss has quietly claimed its place. Despite the weather, the structure stands with calm confidence. Strong, patient, enduring. The father always slows the boat slightly while crossing, not from fear, simply from respect. Places like this remind every traveler how much quiet determination it once took to build the waterways connecting so many American communities. As the boat reaches the far side, the rain begins to soften. The clouds remain overhead, but small patches of brighter light appear beyond them. The air smells wonderfully fresh. Wet pine needles, fresh grass, rich earth, wild mint growing beside the towpath. Even the wooden hull carries the clean scent of rain-soaked timber warmed by the slowly returning daylight. By late afternoon, the steady drizzle has faded into occasional drops falling from tree branches rather than the sky itself. Birds begin singing once more. A squirrel cautiously climbs from its shelter. Sunlight finally slips through an opening in the clouds, sending broad golden beams across the damp countryside. Every leaf sparkles. Every puddle becomes a tiny mirror. A rainbow slowly appears beyond distant hills. Not bold, not brilliant, simply soft and graceful, stretching quietly across the sky as though thanking the rain for its gentle visit. The younger child points excitedly. Look! Everyone pauses. For several peaceful moments, nobody speaks. There is nothing to add. Some beautiful things ask only to be noticed. The father smiles as the boat continues its slow journey beneath clearing skies. Rainy days upon the canal are never considered lost days. They are simply different chapters, chapters filled with quieter sounds, richer colors, warmer cabins, and gentle reminders that even the softest rain has its own kind of beauty. And as the evening sun begins to peek through the retreating clouds, the canal once again carries the little floating home toward another peaceful night, leaving behind nothing more than fresh air, shining leaves, and memories of a beautifully ordinary rainy day in the spring of 1885. A Sunday of rest along the water. Morning arrives more gently than usual. No one aboard the canal boat wakes to prepare the mule's harness before sunrise. No ropes need to be loosened. No cargo must be checked. No destination presses upon the family today. It is Sunday. Across much of America in 1885, Sunday is a day set apart. Not entirely free from work, for animals still need feeding and meals still need cooking. but quieter than every other day of the week. Along the canals, this tradition is honored with deep respect. Many boat families pause their journeys whenever possible, allowing both themselves and their faithful animals a full day of rest. The first light filters softly through the lace curtains of the cabin. Outside, the canal lies perfectly still. Without the steady movement of passing boats, the water becomes almost mirror-like, reflecting white clouds that drift lazily across a pale blue sky. The father is already awake, sitting quietly on the deck with a steaming tin mug warming his hands. He does not speak. He simply watches the morning awaken. A kingfisher darts low across the canal, its brilliant blue feathers flashing briefly in the sunlight before disappearing beneath the branches of an old willow. Moments later, a family of ducks glides silently past the boat. Tiny ducklings paddle closely behind their mother, leaving delicate ripples that spread slowly across the glassy water. The father smiles. Even after years upon the canal, mornings like this still feel like small gifts. Inside the cabin, the comforting aroma of fresh biscuits begins to replace the cool scent of the early morning. The mother works quietly, humming a familiar church hymn almost without realizing it. She mixes flour, butter, and buttermilk inside a large wooden bowl before gently folding the dough with practiced hands. Nothing is rushed. "Good biscuits," she often says, dislike impatience. The younger child appears in the doorway, rubbing sleepy eyes. "Is today really Sunday?" His mother nods. "It certainly is. Does that mean no pulling today?" She laughs softly. "Not for your father." "Not for the mule, and not for you." The child grins. "I think Sundays are my favorite invention." By the time breakfast is ready, the eldest child has unfolded a clean white cloth across the small table. Fresh biscuits, homemade blackberry preserves, butter wrapped carefully in cool cloth, boiled eggs, apple slices, hot tea for the adults, warm milk for the children, simple food, prepared with gratitude. Before eating, the family bows their heads together. Outside, the village church bell begins its first slow ringing of the morning. Its sound drifts peacefully across fields, orchards, and quiet stretches of canal, inviting anyone nearby to gather. The father listens for a moment. "We have plenty of time." The little church sits only a short walk from the canal, its white clapboard walls shining softly beneath the morning sun. A modest wooden steeple rises above the surrounding maple trees, while neat rows of wildflowers bloom beside a narrow stone pathway leading to the front door. Families begin arriving from every direction. Some come by wagon, others walk from nearby farms. Several canal families, dressed in their Sunday clothes, make their way along the towpath toward the church. Though many have traveled hundreds of miles, Sundays often create the feeling that everyone belongs to the same small community. The mother carefully straightens the younger child's collar. "There, you look quite respectable." He smiles proudly. "And you look beautiful." She bends to kiss the top of his head. The church itself is wonderfully simple. Sunlight pours through tall windows, filling the sanctuary with warm golden light. Handcrafted wooden pews line both sides of the aisle. Fresh flowers gathered from nearby fields decorate the front of the room. There are no grand decorations, no towering cathedral ceilings, only honest craftsmanship built by neighbors for neighbors. The minister welcomes everyone with a gentle smile. His voice carries the calm confidence of someone who has spoken to this congregation for many years. The service is quiet. Hymns rise softly toward the wooden ceiling. Children shift occasionally beside their parents. An elderly woman smiles warmly whenever the younger child glances her way. Outside the open windows, birds continue singing as though they too have joined the morning worship. When the service ends, no one seems eager to leave. Friends gather beneath the shade of great oak trees. Hands are shaken. News is exchanged. Questions are asked. How was the canal after last week's rain? Did the spring floods reach the western locks? How is your sister feeling? Will you be traveling east again before autumn? Conversations drift gently from one group to another. The younger child discovers several boys close to his own age. Within minutes, they are skipping flat stones across the canal while laughing whenever one manages 4 or 5 graceful bounces. Nearby, the eldest child helps an elderly gentleman carry a basket filled with vegetables to his wagon. "No need to thank me," he says shyly. The older man smiles. Kindness has a habit of finding its way back. The words remain with him long after the wagon rolls away. Meanwhile, the mothers gather beneath a flowering dogwood tree, exchanging recipes, sewing ideas, and small bits of family news. One woman shares seeds from particularly successful tomato plants. Another offers fresh lavender tied neatly into little bundles. The canal may connect towns with commerce, but Sundays connect people with one another. By early afternoon, the family returns to their boat. No one feels tired, only peaceful. The father stretches comfortably upon the deck with a well-worn book resting across his lap. He reads only a few pages before lowering it again. Some days, simply watching clouds pass overhead feels more rewarding than reading. The younger child lies beside him. "What are you looking at?" "The clouds. What do they remind you of?" The father studies them thoughtfully. "That one looks like a sailing ship, and that one, a sleeping bear." The child laughs. "I thought it looked like mashed potatoes." His father laughs as well. "I believe you're right." The afternoon slips by almost unnoticed. The mother writes a letter to relatives living several towns away, describing the peaceful spring weather, the kindness of Mrs. Harper's bakery, and the beautiful rainbow they had seen after yesterday's rain. The eldest child carefully sharpens pencils and organizes school lessons that continue even while traveling. Education aboard a canal boat requires patience and creativity, but the parents believe deeply that learning should never stop simply because home happens to float. As evening approaches, families throughout the village begin returning quietly to their homes. Smoke rises once again from cottage chimneys. The church bell rings one final time before falling silent. The canal grows wonderfully still. The younger child sits beside the water holding a small piece of stale bread. A pair of friendly ducks paddle close enough to accept the offering before gliding away with quiet dignity. He watches until they disappear around the bend. They always seem to know where they're going. His mother smiles. Perhaps they simply trust the water. He thinks about that for a moment, then nods. As sunset paints the western sky with gentle shades of amber, rose, and lavender, the father unties the little rowboat that has rested quietly behind the canal boat all day. Would anyone care for one last peaceful trip before bedtime? Both children answer immediately. Within moments, the family drifts silently across the calm canal, using only 2 wooden oars whose slow movements scarcely disturb the evening reflections. No destination, no schedule, only the quiet joy of floating together beneath a sky slowly welcoming another peaceful night. Above them, the first evening star appears, then another. The canal reflects each one until it becomes impossible to tell whether the stars belong to the heavens or the water below. For a long while, no one speaks. There is nothing missing from the moment. The week ahead will bring more locks, more villages, more miles of quiet travel, and more ordinary adventures along America's canals. But this gentle Sunday has given them something equally valuable: rest, gratitude, family, and the quiet reminder that the richest journeys are not always measured by the miles traveled, but by the peaceful moments shared together along the way. The quiet homeward journey. Now the long summer day begins to loosen its careful grip. The sun no longer hangs high above the English countryside. Instead, it settles lower in the western sky, spreading warm amber light across the still surface of the canal. Every ripple catches the fading sunlight before letting it drift away toward evening. After a full day of steady travel, the boat's pace becomes even gentler. No one aboard is in a hurry. Life on the canal has always measured itself by distance rather than speed. The father eases the horse to a slower walk. The faithful animal has pulled the heavy narrowboat for many peaceful miles since sunrise. Its ears flick occasionally at a passing fly, but its steady rhythm never changes. The worn leather harness creaks softly. The tow rope remains stretched in its familiar line between horse and boat. Nothing feels rushed. Nothing needs to. The mother steps onto the small stern deck and breathes deeply. The warm scent of river water mingles with cut hay drifting from nearby fields. Somewhere beyond the hedgerows, fresh bread is cooling inside a farmhouse kitchen. Evening has its own collection of gentle fragrances. They have learned to recognize them all. The youngest child sits quietly beside the cabin door, watching dragonflies skim low across the canal. Their transparent wings flash silver whenever they catch the light. He tries to count them. Soon he forgets the number. Watching becomes more enjoyable than counting. The older daughter notices tiny fish breaking the surface now and then, leaving circles that slowly spread across the calm water before disappearing entirely. She wonders how many generations of children have watched these same little ripples from boats just like theirs. Probably more than anyone could ever know. Ahead, another lock comes quietly into view. Unlike the busy locks earlier in the day, this one seems almost sleepy. Only one elderly lockkeeper waits beside the gates. His gray beard catches the golden sunlight. He tips his weathered cap as the family approaches. "Evening," he calls warmly. "And a fine evening to you," the father replies. There is no need for long conversation. The canal has taught everyone that silence often carries as much friendship as words. Together they work the lock with slow, practiced movements. Heavy wooden balance beams swing. Water rises patiently. Iron gears click with familiar sounds. The boat lifts almost without anyone noticing. Soon they are moving once more. The old lockkeeper raises one hand in farewell. The family answers with gentle smiles before continuing toward the quiet countryside beyond. The canal slowly narrows between long rows of willow trees. Their graceful branches dip close enough to brush the roof of the cabin. Soft green leaves whisper against painted wood. Tiny shadows dance across the deck. Inside the cabin, supper begins to take shape. The mother lights the small cooking stove once again. Its cheerful fire has become the heart of the family's floating home. Soon onions sizzle gently inside a cast iron pan. A little salted pork joins them. Then potatoes. Finally, a handful of herbs gathered earlier beside the towpath. The wonderful aroma fills every corner of the tiny cabin. Outside, the father smiles. He knows supper is almost ready without needing to ask. The smell tells him everything. The children help prepare the little folding table. Each plate has its familiar place. Each spoon has been carefully polished through years of daily use. Nothing matches perfectly. Nothing needs to. Every object carries its own quiet history. Many were handed down from grandparents who also lived upon these waters. Some bear tiny scratches earned during hundreds of peaceful evenings exactly like this one. While supper cooks, the family passes another working boat heading in the opposite direction. Its captain raises 2 fingers from the tiller. The father answers with the same simple gesture. They never stop. There is no need. Canal people understand one another without lengthy introductions. Every passing boat shares the same floating road. Every family understands the same weather, the same locks, the same quiet mornings, the same patient evenings. A little farther ahead, several cows stand beside the water's edge. Their reflections stretch almost perfectly across the still canal. Only an occasional ripple disturbs the mirror-like surface. A kingfisher suddenly flashes brilliant blue between two overhanging branches. For just a heartbeat, it seems almost unreal. Then it disappears downstream as quickly as it arrived. The younger boy laughs softly. No matter how many times he sees one, the tiny bird still feels like a little piece of magic hidden inside ordinary life. The father notices smoke rising from several distant cottages. Families everywhere are preparing evening meals. Children are returning home. Dogs wait beside garden gates. Church bells begin ringing somewhere beyond the fields. Their peaceful sound floats gently across the countryside. The canal seems to carry the bells almost as easily as it carries boats. The daughter quietly hums an old folk tune while watching the reflections drift beside them. No one asks where she learned it. Songs simply traveled along the canals the same way stories did. Boatmen shared melodies. Families remembered them. Children carried them into another generation. Some songs had crossed hundreds of miles before reaching these peaceful waters. As twilight slowly approaches, the colors begin changing. Golden fields soften into warm bronze. Green trees become darker silhouettes. The sky slowly turns shades of pale lavender and gentle blue. The first evening stars wait patiently beyond the fading daylight. The mother serves supper. Everyone gathers inside the cozy cabin. The meal is wonderfully simple. Stewed potatoes, salted pork, fresh bread purchased earlier that afternoon, a little homemade jam saved carefully for dessert. After hours of honest work, every bite tastes deeply satisfying. Conversation remains gentle. The children speak quietly about the horses they admired at the village stable. The father wonders how far tomorrow's journey might take them. The mother reminds everyone that another stretch of canal passes through beautiful woodland before reaching the next market town. The children smile. Every new day promises another quiet discovery. When the meal is finished, washing up takes only a few minutes. Water is carefully used. Nothing is wasted. The dishes are dried with a linen cloth worn soft by countless evenings. Outside, darkness continues arriving slowly. Lanterns begin glowing inside distant boats moored along the bank. Each tiny light reflects across the canal like another peaceful star. The father gently guides their own boat toward a favorite overnight mooring beneath a line of old oak trees. The horse stops willingly. Its long day's work is finished. The harness comes away, piece by piece. The faithful animal lowers its head gratefully toward fresh grass growing beside the towpath. Nearby, crickets begin their evening chorus. The air grows cooler. A light breeze carries the earthy scent of damp soil and wildflowers. Above, the moon slowly rises over the quiet English countryside. Its pale reflection settles gently upon the sleeping canal. The boat hardly moves now. It rocks almost too softly to notice. Inside the cabin, blankets are unfolded. The stove gives off its last comforting warmth. The children curl beneath thick quilts while listening to the familiar sounds outside. A distant owl, the quiet chewing of the horse, water gently touching the hull, leaves rustling overhead. These sounds have become their lullaby. For families who lived aboard canal boats in 1885, every peaceful evening ended much like this one. Not with excitement, not with noise, but with gratitude for another safe journey completed beneath the quiet English sky. The final delivery of the season. The first light of dawn arrives almost unnoticed. A pale ribbon of silver stretches across the eastern sky, gently replacing the deep blue of night. Mist rises from the quiet canal in delicate curls, drifting lazily over the water before dissolving into the cool morning air. The world feels hushed, as though nature itself has decided to linger a little longer before beginning another day. Inside the cabin, the family wakes to familiar sounds. The soft creak of timber, the gentle lapping of water against the hull, the quiet snort of the mule waiting patiently along the towpath. These sounds have become as comforting as any clock or church bell. The father slips outside with his tin mug of warm coffee. The crisp morning air carries the scent of damp earth, fresh-cut hay, and the faint sweetness of wild clover growing beside the canal. He pauses for a long moment. Today feels different, not because anything dramatic will happen, but because today's delivery will be the last large shipment before autumn slowly begins settling across the countryside. By next month, cooler mornings will arrive. Leaves will begin turning shades of amber and crimson. The canal will grow quieter. For now, however, summer still lingers kindly. The mother soon joins him, wrapping a light wool shawl around her shoulders. The sky looks peaceful. It always does before a good day's journey, she smiles. I've learned to trust your weather predictions. I've learned to trust the clouds. Nearby, the younger child kneels beside the mule, gently brushing its coat before fastening the familiar leather harness. The animal stands perfectly still. Years of routine have created complete understanding between the family and their dependable companion. Ready for one more trip? The mule flicks an ear. I'll take that as yes. Within the hour, the boat begins moving once again. The tow rope tightens. The mule settles into its comfortable pace. The narrow boat glides quietly through the mirror-like canal, leaving only the gentlest ripples behind. Morning birds fill the hedgerows with cheerful songs. A blue heron stands motionless in the shallows, watching for breakfast. Beyond the fields, dairy farmers begin their morning chores while thin columns of chimney smoke rise from distant cottages. Everywhere, another ordinary day begins. The canal winds gently between orchards heavy with late summer apples. Branches bend beneath their weight. Some fruit has already fallen into the grass, where curious rabbits cautiously emerge for an early meal. The younger child watches everything with quiet fascination. I think this is my favorite season. His mother looks toward the glowing orchards. I say that every season. So do I. They laugh softly. Perhaps every season deserves to be someone's favorite. As the sun climbs higher, the family approaches the bustling market town of Ashford Crossing, one of the busiest trading points along this stretch of canal. Even before reaching the docks, signs of activity begin to appear. Farm wagons line the road leading toward town. Horse-drawn carts carry baskets overflowing with vegetables. A pair of fishermen unload fresh catches beside a small riverside warehouse. Blacksmiths have already opened their workshops, their rhythmic hammering echoing gently through the cool morning air. The father guides the boat carefully toward its assigned mooring. Several familiar faces wave from neighboring boats. Morning! Good to see you again. Right on schedule. One of the warehouse workers smiles broadly. I've been waiting for that flour shipment. The father tips his hat. And we've been looking forward to delivering it. Soon everyone begins working together. Heavy sacks of flour are passed carefully from boat to dock. Wooden crates filled with handmade pottery follow. Then barrels of dried beans, bundles of wool, boxes of sewing supplies. Every item represents weeks of careful planning, honest labor, and quiet cooperation among countless people living along the canal. Nothing moves quickly. There is no shouting, no rushing, only steady hands doing familiar work. The eldest child helps record each shipment inside the merchant's large leather ledger. His handwriting has improved greatly over the summer. The merchant notices. You've become quite the clerk. The young man smiles shyly. My mother insists I practice every evening. A wise woman. Nearby, the younger child watches workers unload colorful baskets of peaches brought from southern farms. The sweet fragrance fills the entire dock. One elderly farmer notices the child's curious expression. Ever tasted one fresh from the basket? The boy shakes his head. Without hesitation, the farmer hands him a perfectly ripe peach. Best eaten before it decides otherwise. The juice runs happily down the child's fingers with the very first bite. His eyes grow wide. "I didn't know fruit could taste like sunshine." The farmer laughs warmly. "Now you do." While business continues, the mother visits several familiar shops. Fresh tea, lamp oil, a new spool of blue thread, 2 small notebooks for the children's lessons. Nothing extravagant, simply the quiet necessities that keep everyday life comfortable aboard their floating home. At the bakery, Mrs. Ellis greets her like an old friend. "I saved 2 loaves for you. I hoped you might." And the baker whispers with a smile, "I may have added a few cinnamon buns." The mother laughs. "The children will think you've spoiled them. I intend to." By early afternoon, every delivery has been completed. The merchant closes his ledger with a satisfied nod. Another successful season. The father looks across the busy waterfront. "It has been a good one. You'll return in the spring?" "God willing." The 2 men shake hands, not merely as businessmen, but as neighbors connected by years of shared trust. As preparations begin for the journey home, something unexpected happens. The warehouse owner presents the family with a small wooden box. "For your kindness this season." The father hesitates. "You've already paid us." "This isn't payment, it's appreciation." Inside rests a carefully crafted brass compass. Simple, beautiful. Its polished surface catches the afternoon light. Engraved beneath the glass are just a few words: "Safe travels wherever the canal leads." For a long moment, no one speaks. The father finally smiles. "We'll treasure it. And perhaps someday," the merchant says, "your children will steer by it." The younger child gently turns the compass in his hands. The tiny needle settles calmly toward the north. It always knows where it's going. His mother rests a hand upon his shoulder. Sometimes people do too. As the boat slowly leaves Ashford Crossing behind, everyone turns for one last look. The busy docks grow smaller. Warehouse roofs disappear behind trees. Church steeples fade into the afternoon haze. Soon only the peaceful canal remains once more. The cargo hold is lighter now, yet somehow the boat feels fuller, filled with fresh memories, friendly conversations, simple kindness, quiet gratitude. The afternoon passes peacefully. Dragonflies dance above the reeds. Swallows sweep gracefully across the water. The mule continues its patient walk without complaint. The brass compass rests safely inside the cabin, catching little flashes of sunlight whenever the boat rounds another gentle bend. As evening approaches, the father glances toward his family. The children are talking quietly. The mother is mending a shirt beside the cabin window. The canal stretches endlessly ahead, calm as ever. He realizes something. For most people, these journeys would seem ordinary, perhaps even uneventful. But ordinary days, lived with purpose, kindness, and gratitude, quietly become extraordinary when remembered years later. Long after the cargo has been forgotten, long after the seasons have passed, long after the old mule has taken its final peaceful walk, the true treasure will not be the goods they carried. It will be these gentle mornings, these shared meals, these quiet conversations, these miles of peaceful water traveled together beneath America's ever-changing skies. And as the warm colors of sunset begin reflecting across the canal once more, the family continues homeward at their familiar, unhurried pace, carrying with them far more than any ledger could ever record. Evening reflections along the quiet towpath. The evening sky slowly softened into shades of lavender and pale gold as the canal boat rested quietly beneath the gentle branches of old willow trees. The day's work had finally come to an end, not with celebration or excitement, but with the familiar satisfaction that came from another peaceful day completed. The water beside the hull reflected the fading colors of the sky, broken only by slow circles spreading outward where a fish rose briefly before disappearing again into the cool depths. The horses had already been unharnessed. Their leather collars rested neatly upon wooden pegs fastened to the side of the cabin. After pulling the heavy boat for mile after mile along the towpath, the patient animals now stood contentedly beside a grassy bank. They lowered their heads into fresh hay while occasionally lifting their ears toward distant sounds that drifted across the countryside. The youngest daughter quietly carried a wooden bucket filled with fresh water from a nearby hand pump. She poured it slowly into a broad trough, smiling softly as one of the horses nudged her shoulder with gentle familiarity. It was a small evening ritual she had repeated hundreds of times, and like so many moments aboard the Canal, it required no conversation. Nearby, her older brother carefully examined the harnesses. He rubbed each leather strap with warm tallow, working it deep into the worn material to keep it supple against rain and changing weather. Cracked leather could fail unexpectedly during a long journey, so caring for the equipment each evening was just as important as steering the boat itself. Nothing aboard was considered too ordinary to deserve attention. The father climbed slowly onto the roof of the narrow cabin, settling onto a folded blanket while watching the peaceful landscape stretch into the distance. Across the canal, smoke drifted lazily from a farmhouse chimney, carrying the comforting scent of oak firewood through the cooling air. A flock of starlings crossed overhead. Their movements seemed almost choreographed, shifting together in graceful waves before settling among distant trees. He had watched scenes like this for decades. No two evenings were exactly alike, yet each somehow felt wonderfully familiar. Canal families measured life differently from many people ashore. Some remembered years by elections or wars. Others remembered them by floods, frozen winters, or famous harvests. Boat families often remembered life by routes: the Birmingham run, the long Liverpool journey, the difficult winter near Stoke, the peaceful summer carrying pottery through quiet valleys. Every canal held memories. Every lock carried stories. Every bridge quietly witnessed generations passing beneath its stone arches. Inside the cabin, supper simmered gently atop the small iron stove. Tonight's meal was wonderfully simple. A thick vegetable stew filled with potatoes, onions, carrots, and barley slowly bubbled inside a black cast-iron pot. A loaf of dark bread rested beside it, still wrapped carefully inside linen to preserve every remaining slice. The mother stirred the stew slowly while adding a handful of dried herbs gathered weeks earlier from the edge of another canal. Nothing was wasted. Even small herbs carefully collected during quiet walks often flavored several family meals. Their daughter arranged 4 tin plates upon the narrow table. Although space remained limited, years of practice had transformed the tiny cabin into a remarkably organized home. Every shelf served several purposes. Every cupboard held exactly what was needed. Every object possessed its own familiar place. A visitor might have thought the cabin impossibly small. To the family, it felt complete. After supper, they washed the dishes together. Warm water from the stove filled a wooden basin, while soap made from animal fat and wood ash produced only a modest lather. Each plate dried quickly beside the open cabin door, where cool evening breezes drifted gently through. The youngest child carefully polished the family's brass lantern. Its glass chimney had become slightly smoky after many evenings of steady use. Using a soft cloth, she cleaned every surface until the brass reflected the warm glow of the fading sunset. Soon darkness would arrive. The lantern would once again become the heart of their floating home. Outside, other canal boats had also begun stopping for the night. One after another, distant lanterns appeared beside quiet stretches of water. From far away they resembled tiny stars resting upon the earth. Occasionally another boater raised a hand in greeting. Sometimes neighbors exchanged a few friendly words across the water. News traveled slowly along the canals. Someone might mention a repaired lock farther north. Another might speak about rising grain prices in Manchester. Someone else quietly reported that ice had lingered unusually long the previous winter. These conversations rarely felt hurried. Time itself seemed to move more gently beside the canal. Later, the father opened a small wooden box tucked carefully beneath his bed. Inside rested several treasured keepsakes, a faded family photograph, an old brass pocket watch inherited from his own father, several folded letters, a tiny pressed wildflower carefully preserved between 2 pages of a worn notebook. The flower had been gathered many years earlier by his wife during their very first summer together aboard the Canal. Although its color had long faded, its memory remained vivid. He smiled quietly before closing the lid once again. Many Canal families owned few possessions, yet the objects they kept often carried deep personal meaning. Each item represented a place visited, a family member remembered, a difficult journey completed, or simply an ordinary day made unforgettable by time itself. Outside, frogs had begun singing among nearby reeds. Their steady chorus blended naturally with the gentle creaking of mooring ropes and the occasional splash of fish beneath the surface. Somewhere beyond the fields, an owl called softly into the growing darkness. The sounds felt comforting rather than lonely. The canal at night never seemed truly silent. It simply whispered instead of speaking. The mother stepped outside, carrying 2 warm mugs filled with weak tea. She handed one quietly to her husband before sitting beside him upon the cabin roof. Neither felt any need to fill the peaceful evening with constant conversation. Years spent traveling together had created a quiet understanding beyond words. Sometimes companionship simply meant sharing silence beneath an open sky. Above them, the first stars slowly appeared. Long before electric lights filled cities, countless working families knew these same stars well. They offered quiet beauty after long days of labor. Children learned familiar constellations while lying upon cabin roofs during warm summer evenings. Parents pointed toward the North Star when explaining direction. The heavens themselves became gentle companions throughout every journey. Their youngest daughter rested her head against her mother's shoulder. She listened as crickets filled the air with their endless evening song. Somewhere nearby, another family softly played a fiddle. The melody floated across the still water before gradually fading into the night. No audience applauded. No performance had been planned. Music simply belonged to evenings like these. The father finally stood and looked once more along the peaceful canal stretching beyond the fading light. Tomorrow would bring another destination, another lock, another village, another quiet stretch of countryside. Life aboard a canal boat rarely remained in one place, yet strangely, it always felt like home, because home had never been tied to a particular town. Home floated gently wherever the boat came to rest. And beneath the calm stars of another ordinary evening in 1885, surrounded by family, familiar work, and the slow breathing rhythm of the canal itself, there was nowhere else they wished to be. Drifting into night, the canal's quiet legacy. The evening settles so gently that it is almost impossible to notice the exact moment daylight finally lets go. One by one, the last golden reflections disappear from the surface of the canal, replaced by deep shades of blue that seem to soften every outline along the water. The narrow boat rocks almost too slowly to measure, floating with the calm confidence of something that has belonged to this water for countless seasons. The children have already finished their simple supper. Bowls have been washed with carefully saved water before being stacked neatly inside the tiny cupboard. Every object has its place aboard a canal boat. Space is precious, and order makes daily life far easier. A small lantern now hangs from an iron hook near the cabin door. Its warm glow spills gently across the painted woodwork, making the hand-painted roses and delicate green leaves seem almost alive in the flickering light. The quiet artwork decorating so many canal boats was more than simple decoration. Families often painted their cabins with bright floral patterns and colorful designs, transforming practical boats into warm and welcoming homes. Even during long weeks on the waterways, beauty found its place beside usefulness. Outside, the evening air grows cooler. The scent of damp grass drifts across the towpath. Somewhere beyond a line of willow trees, a cow lets out one slow, sleepy call before silence settles again. Nothing hurries. Nothing demands attention. The canal itself seems content simply to exist. You rest quietly beside the family as they prepare for another peaceful night aboard their floating home. The father checks the mooring rope once more. His experienced hands pull gently against the thick hemp line, making certain it remains secure through the night. The knot has been tied thousands of times before. Muscle memory guides every movement. Satisfied, he returns aboard. The mother folds one last blanket before placing it neatly beside the children's narrow sleeping bunks. She quietly smooths each pillow, just as parents everywhere have done for generations. Simple acts, small gestures. Yet these tiny routines hold an entire family together. Outside the cabin window, stars begin appearing one by one. Far from the smoke of large industrial cities, the night sky above the canal often revealed astonishing numbers of stars. Their reflections shimmer softly across the still water, doubling the beauty overhead. It becomes difficult to tell where sky ends and water begins. The boat feels suspended between both. Somewhere farther along the canal, another family quietly finishes their own evening. A lantern glows in the distance before disappearing behind a bend lined with alder trees. Though separated by miles of winding water, canal families formed a quiet community. They recognized familiar boats, exchanged greetings at locks, shared weather news, helped repair damaged equipment, and occasionally traded small comforts during difficult journeys. Life on the canal could sometimes feel isolated, yet it was rarely lonely. The waterways connected people just as surely as they connected towns. You imagine generations of children growing up aboard these moving homes. They learned to balance confidently along narrow gunwales before many had ever walked through a formal classroom. They learned the names of locks long before memorizing maps. They watched changing landscapes become familiar friends. Every season carried different lessons. Spring brought swelling waterways and nesting birds. Summer filled canals with flowers, travelers, and long daylight hours. Autumn painted every tree with amber and crimson. Winter demanded patience, careful planning, and quiet endurance. Each season left memories behind. Years passed almost unnoticed. The children who once skipped happily beside the horses gradually became adults themselves. One day they would take hold of the tow rope. They would steer the family boat through familiar locks. They would teach another generation how to read changing clouds, judge shallow water, repair worn ropes, and greet fellow boaters with easy kindness. History often remembers great inventions: railroads, steam engines, factories, telegraphs. But history is also carried forward by ordinary families who quietly continued their daily work without expecting recognition. Families like this one. They transported coal that warmed homes, grain that became bread, timber that built villages, bricks that raised schools, iron that strengthened bridges. Every ordinary cargo quietly helped shape everyday life throughout Britain during the 19th century. Most people who benefited from those deliveries never knew the names of the boat families who carried them. Yet their work touched countless lives. As the century slowly moved forward, change arrived once again. Railways expanded rapidly across the country. Trains could often travel faster than canal boats. New industries demanded greater speed. Gradually, many waterways became quieter. Some canal families left boating altogether, seeking different work in growing towns and cities. Others remained as long as they could, continuing traditions that had served Britain for generations. The rhythm of the canals slowed, yet it never disappeared completely. Even today, many of those old waterways remain. The locks still rise patiently from the landscape. Stone bridges still arch gracefully over narrow channels. Towpaths still welcome quiet footsteps. Historic narrowboats still glide through calm reflections, preserving memories of a way of life that once shaped entire communities. Visitors walking beside these canals today may hear only birdsong and gentle ripples. Yet beneath every reflection rests the invisible history of countless ordinary people. Boatmen, boatwomen, children, lock keepers, blacksmiths, stable workers, bridge tenders, merchants, families whose names were rarely written into history books. Their stories survive instead in weathered lock gates, worn towpaths, faded cabin paintings, and quiet stretches of peaceful water. You remain beside the canal a little longer. The lantern burns softly inside the cabin. A kettle rests silently upon the cooling stove. Outside, reeds whisper as a gentle breeze passes through them. An owl glides silently above the water before disappearing into darkness. The horse sleeps peacefully in a nearby field after another long day's work. The canal itself continues its endless journey beneath the stars. Patient, steady, unhurried, much like the people who once called it home. Tonight, you have not followed the footsteps of famous generals or powerful rulers. Instead, you have shared a single peaceful day with an ordinary canal boat family in the year 1885. You have watched quiet work become quiet dignity. You have discovered how patience shaped every journey, how small routines built meaningful lives, and how history is often found not only in grand events, but in ordinary mornings, careful hands, shared meals, gentle conversations, and peaceful evenings beside calm water. As your own evening grows quieter, perhaps you can still hear the soft splash of water against the boat's wooden hull. Perhaps you can almost smell the faint mixture of river water, polished oak, fresh hay, and warm tea drifting gently through the little painted cabin. The lantern grows dimmer. The stars shine a little brighter. The canal carries its silent reflections into another peaceful night. And somewhere beyond the last bend, another quiet journey is already waiting. Sleep well, dear friend. May your dreams drift as gently as an old canal boat beneath a sky full of stars.